We're going to get into the meat of this in the next hour. I think this is an incredible story. It's a former prisoner of war who's facing eviction from his house because his care is too expensive. This is despite being told by his local council that they would handle the matter 6 months ago. There's now a big campaign. Nearly 250,000 people have signed it. This is almost as big as the one of the more recent campaigns that we debated where we were told, I won't get into the details of it now because it's irrelevant, we were told that if you get that many names on a campaign, that's got to change something. Well, this guy and his campaign has got 200,000 on it so far, more than that, being forced into care after his local authority refused to continue paying for his carer. Let's speak to Piers Metric. Piers is the founder of Honour Our Forces. How are you, Piers?
I'm very well, Ian. How are you?
Yeah, very well. Thanks for coming on with us. Listen, I know that you've been onto this case for a while now. Tell us a little bit more about it.
Yeah, I got involved with this probably 6 to 7 months ago when it first sort of came to my attention through our Twitter feed, which you're aware of, obviously. Mm-hmm. And I thought, I need to speak to this chap. So I managed to speak to his son, Mike.
This is Robert Clark we're talking about, isn't it? The 96.
We're talking about Robbie Clark, who's reappeared in the newspapers today and everything. And we had major sort of TV, radio and newspaper coverage like about 6 months ago when we managed to get this petition, which I think, as you say, is about 250,000 people signed it, which was presented to Brent Council. Which means they have to take action. They have to look at it. They have to read it. They have to give us a reply. Mm-hmm. Up to this point now, we've still not received a reply from them, full stop. They said, yeah, we'll be in touch. Nothing. We've communicated with them, and Mike has communicated with them, which Mike is Robbie's son.
Yeah.
So I leave that side to him because it's the personal level.
Sure.
And they just keep saying, yes, okay, we'll sort this out. But initially they said, right, we'll do a deferred payment, but he'll have to go into a home. Now, Robbie doesn't want to go into a home. That's his choice. His faculties are all there. His brain still works. Putting him into a nursing home would be like putting him back in. His words would kill me within a few weeks because it'd be like going back into a prisoner of war camp.
And the theory here then, Piers, was that Brent Council originally said that they would continue paying for his care, and now they're saying they can't afford it, and therefore, if he hasn't got care, he can't stay at home, so he loses not only the care but also his home, because he'll have to go into a care home.
Correct. Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about Robbie's past as a 96-year-old war hero. What's his military past?
97 now. He's 97.
97, okay.
Yeah, he's just had his birthday about a month ago. Right, Robbie was in the County of Durham Regiment, and then was sent off to Brook, where eventually he was caught with a lot of them by Rommel. Mm-hmm. He was then sent to... he thought he was going to Italy. They said, right, we need some people that have got trades. He was a carpenter by trade, so they said, we'll send you to Italy to do some carpentry work. On the train stopped. I'll cut this really quickly. Train stopped, ended up going to Poland.
Wow.
The Italians got off the train, the Poles got on. The Germans got on and off they went to Poland, where he was then, later on, a few years later, was marched on what we call the Death March, which many people are not 100% sure about, but it was a 1,000-mile march, Yep. Through the winter, where he was passing people were falling. If they were falling and dying, or just dying, you'd see the Germans, they'd just pick up a gun and just shoot them in front of him. So his whole head was mixed up. Eventually he was freed by the Americans and eventually got home to see his wife. And his memory is so good. Sitting with him, which I've done, and you listen to the stories and you listen to his experiences, this guy doesn't need what he's going through now. He's been through hell, like a lot of the people at that time. I just think Brent Council, which we've commented about it on Twitter, and people go, the Conservatives. It's a Labour-run council. And they don't seem to give a monkeys. They really don't. They just think they can ride above it. They're not going to be they haven't got an election for the local council for another year or so they don't seem to care.
Yeah, they'd probably say we haven't got any money because the wicked Tories have taken our money away, so we have to be a bit more austere than we would have been.
They've got millions. They can afford to do lavish parties. They can afford to do this. They can afford to pay their CEOs hundreds of thousands of pounds, but they can't afford a few £100 for a guy that stood up for this country, and to be counted. Like everyone else of that generation, we should be thankful. We would not be in this country. We wouldn't have a country like we have now, which is a little bit worrying saying that right now. But the freedom of speech, we wouldn't have the freedom of speech. We wouldn't be able to do what we do now if it wasn't for people like Robbie.
Listen, on that point, Piers, we must end, but thank you, and I think you've brilliantly outlined who we're dealing with and what we're dealing with. I want your thoughts on this in the next section. 0345 6060 973. Petition, get onto any campaign, whether it's to the council, whether it's an online Facebook campaign, whatever it happens to be, and make a noise about this as well. This is just extraordinary stuff. I'll reiterate the situation in a few moments. 0345 6060. Hi, Kathy.
Hello, Ian.
Hello
nice
there.
To talk to you again.
And you too. What are your thoughts on this?
Oh, I'm steaming. I'm steaming here.
Yeah.
These people went to war to make England better. They did as they were told because they were forces. Yeah. And the soldiers just do what they're told, whether it's right or wrong. And I believe that they do it to make a better England or Great Britain. I was 6 when World War II started, and lads came back then, maimed, wouldn't talk about it. I wasn't born then, but in 1914-18, they wouldn't talk about it, and it's still happening today. And I think it's absolutely disgraceful, Ian. Yes, these people are special cases,
yeah,
and they make enough money to find some for others that aren't entitled to it, and I think that these men have given their lives for a better and more peaceful and more comfortable place to come back to. And they haven't found that, so they must wonder what it was all about, whether it was worth it. Yeah. And these old soldiers, they just give up and die because the reason for living's gone.
Kathy, always a pleasure, and I think it's I think the points and the way you've just phrased that is completely and utterly perfect. Thank you. Jerry is in Kent. Hello, Jerry.
Hello, good evening, Ian.
Good evening to you. What are you thinking on this?
Well, I shouldn't think like everybody in the whole country, if they've got any sense or heart. There's, no disrespect to all these refugees coming over and whatever. They got nowhere to live. Blah, blah, blah. People putting things in the window, yeah, all well and good. Do you know what? I'd have him coming living at my house, mate. Yeah. I've got a spare bedroom there, he could have for nothing. 97 years of age. Yep. And to have to go through that heartache, all the things he's done for us, if it weren't for people like him, we wouldn't have this country. And plus, I think it's about time that this country got their act in gear and thought, you know what, let's look after our old and our vulnerable rather than thinking about other people that are trying to come through a tunnel. Let somebody else worry about. I'm not saying disrespect them. Everyone should have a home and somewhere to live. But this poor old guy, I think it's totally, really wrong.
Listen, Jerry, thank you for being the first to make that point as well. I think many will echo your thoughts. Thank you. 034 comes in from Nicholas, who says this veteran and war hero should be looked after as a matter of honour for what he and his generation gave so much for. It's not a case of let's look after him because he's old. It should be done as a debt of gratitude that we owe him and the fallen. My grandfather fought in North Africa and was told in 2001 there had been an overpayment of his pension and benefits, and therefore he owed the state £742.18. This was like a fortune to him, and although it says natural causes on his death certificate, I believe it was the worry that killed him, as his generation prided themselves on not owing anything to anyone. He died 13 days later, says Nicholas. That's an incredibly moving point, particularly the last point you made, Nicholas. Thank you. William.
Hi, Ian. How are you?
Very well. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, my instinctive thought was the FTSE 100 index is worth a few trillion. Why doesn't the director just get out his checkbook, take his PR department if he has to? Mm-hmm. I'm not suggesting he should do that, but go down to Brent or wherever it is and say, how much does this guy need to pay his housing bill for a year? Here's a check, and we'd like to thank him very much for everything he did. Have a nice day. How long would that take? And actually, it's not just the money; it's actually getting out of his office and go there. That it's not that hard to do.
It isn't that hard to do. What do you think's? What are your thoughts about what's going on here? Is this an issue really that? And looking at the small print, as much as we can find on this, William, there seems to be something tied up in this thing about who pays for care. And if you've got a home that's privately owned, then somewhere along the line, the owner of that is perhaps liable for that care, as distinct from the taxpayer.
So I don't know the details of the story, and in a way, it doesn't really matter, and I don't really care. The guy fought for this country. My late stepfather died 6 years ago. He was fortunate that he had family around him and a bit of money, so he was able to go into a very nice care home, very close to where he lived. The other thing is, of course, although I don't know this person's individual circumstances right now,
sure,
most elderly people, if they have to move home at that age, they usually die within 6 months because of the stress and the change.
Yeah.
And they're old anyway.
Sure.
But the other point I wanted, the reason why I mentioned my stepdad is that my stepdad was a Holocaust survivor. He, in 1939, was serving in the Polish army when the Nazis declared war. That, I think, if I remember correctly, caused Britain to declare war with Germany. He was one of the few who managed to survive one of the Nazi concentration camps when many didn't. After, I think it was many weeks in hospital recovering because of starvation, he actually joined the American and British Allies as a translator, made it here, made a life here, and when he retired, devoted pretty much all of his time to... I remember when he was he died 6 years ago, he was in his 97th year. I remember when he was age 90, going to visit people, elderly people in old people's homes who were 70, because his health was better than theirs. So we have a tradition in this country that we're supposed to look after people who serve this country, and if we can't look after this guy who served who served this country, I get a bit annoyed with people who conflate looking after this guy with Syrians. I think the Syrian issue is another completely separate issue, and by the way, one of the things I find very annoying is that there's 6 oil states who haven't taken a single refugee: Saudi Arabia, Kuwait. Mm-hmm. And the question is, how many should we take? Well, my question is, how many? I don't have an objection to us taking some. I'm very grateful that we're actually spending money in the region, in the refugee camps, helping them, so that it's not just the very strongest and fittest who manage to get to Europe. But I think it's time that we as a country, yes, we want to do our bit, of course we do, and we have a tradition of doing that. But I think that given that we've had probably, depending on which figures you choose, maybe 7, 8, 10 million migrants into this country who were economic migrants in the last 10 years, I think it's fair that we ask that the oil-rich states, that it's time that they played their part. And if they don't want to, or if we're going to say it's not the right place for them to go because of human rights, let's stop buying their oil.
All right. On that point, William, thank you. David is a nice man in Cambridgeshire. Hello, David.
Good evening, Nick.
Ian,
sorry. my brain's gone. There we go.
You've either got to be called Nick or Ian to work here, so...
Yeah.
What are your thoughts, David?
Well, as a ex-serviceman I got invalidated out of the Air Force because I got blown up on an exercise, strangely enough.
Okay.
But there we go. Very uplifting, wouldn't recommend it. But I'm used to my colleague friends that I have met via combat stress and that. Unfortunately, this is a story that we're all too familiar with, really. It seems that if you come out of the forces and you come out fit and well and you've got loads of medals and great, everybody's thinking wonderful.
Yeah.
But if you come out broken, then that's it.
here's the carpet. Kindly nail it down behind us while we get on with our lives and forget all about you.
How did we arrive? It's a big question to say, how did we arrive here? Was there a point when this kind of thing didn't happen and then it did? Or have these little inconsistencies always been there? And are they fundamental to or are they exclusive to service personnel? Or is it just something that happens to some people of a certain age?
Well, it's funny. My mother's father was a submariner, and he got appendicitis on his submarine, and they surfaced, and they got him to a Navy hospital in Plymouth. And this was 1930. In fact, it was 1st of January 1930.
Wow.
And he died of appendicitis. Because the Navy got him ashore, the Navy would not pay my grandmother a pension.
Is that
because
right?
They said that they had done their duty by getting him to hospital. And that was in 1930. So nothing has changed at all.
Well, I thought you were going to tell me a story that was, for a second, going to tell me how incredible it used to be compared to now. But that's back 80 years ago. And I've seen the letters from the War Office I have to live on a war pension, and I'm regularly £500 overdrawn every month because I don't qualify for ESA because they say I get too much money because my war pension's too much. Yeah, they shouldn't take your war pension into account at all. But the government's got nice little loopholes where it can. Yes, and they have a PhD in loopholes, of course, don't they?
Yeah, and as far as the gentleman earlier mentioned the military covenant, well, that's just a complete joke.
Do you know, it's interesting that he mentioned that, because I'd even forgotten that existed, because it
doesn't, as far as we're concerned.
It scarcely comes up these days, but I do remember, I think when Cameron was in opposition, talking about signing up to the military covenant.
It is like a certain person waving a piece of paper around about 1938. It's not worth the paper it's written on. Politicians think it is.
Yeah.
But then the majority of politicians have never put a uniform on in their life, so they wouldn't have a clue.
Good point. And it's not a cheap point either. It's a very relevant one. David, thank you, sir. Helen is in Ely in Cambridgeshire. Hi.
Hi.
Hello. What are your thoughts?
Well, I'm really, like everybody else, disgusted about the way they've treated that 97-year-old.
Yeah.
But then people who've lived through the war and everything have never been treated better. My father was aircrew, shot down in 1940, and my mother was given the great sum of 11 shillings a week. For the youngsters, that's 55p to bring me up on. And the other thing I'm quite pleased about now is, at last, people are giving the bomber crews almost as much as it's always been the Spitfire and that they've always been these wonderful, wonderful people. And the bomber crews have almost been a little secret in the cupboard. But now this year, suddenly, after all my life, I found the bomber crews are actually getting some respect.
So it's finally happened, but too late clearly for many. Helen, thank you. Linda's in Glasgow. Hello, Linda.
Yeah, hello, Ian.
Hi.
Yes, I think Brent Council should be damn well ashamed of herself.
Yeah.
Take that he was in the army out of the equation. The man is 79 years of age.
97?
Mr. Robbie, Robbie Clark, he's 97.
Yeah, Robbie, yeah.
He's an elderly man.
Yeah.
Take that he was in the army out of the equation. He's elderly. He should never be at that age frightened of his house.
Correct.
He's spent his money, his life savings on care.
How do we wind up in a country, Linda, that once upon a time prided itself on being caring about areas such as this?
I don't know, Ian. I don't know what's happened. That man has paid most probably all his life. We should be looking after the elderly.
Yeah. Don't go away, Keena, with you in a second. Mark is in Liverpool. How are you, Mark?
Hello, Ian, mate.
Hiya, mate. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. Listen, let me just get this straight before I start. See, this Brent Council, this is a Labour-owned council, isn't it, this?
It is.
Yeah, well, anyway, I knew that. I was just confirming it. Do you know what really makes me embarrassed about the left, mate? And just go with me, mate.
You're more left-wing than an Albanian Keep Left sign, Mark, so your credentials are all there. You're not here to bat for anybody but the left. However...
Go on. Okay, are you ready?
Yes.
I am sick to death of the left, right? And these people, these are the type of people, right? You'll see someone getting bullied on a bus or on a train somewhere and sit on their hands, and then afterwards want to go and understand the person who's committed the crime. And you'll see with usually on the receiving end afterwards. You know me, Ian, I've been in the system. You might think I might support that. No, mate. And it's gone straight down into all the people who control these councils. It's gone over into war. They look down on everything to do with war, from the top to the bottom, and that includes our soldiers. It's happening with the Second World War, and it'll go on happening. It's happening with our lads now on the streets, and they're an afterthought, and they're the least important people who come in on their agendas and caseloads in front of them, and that's a fact, mate. The left have got a lot to answer for.
All right, passionately put, Mark, echoed by many, thank you. Interesting that I've just been made aware that the leader of Brent Council is a man who describes himself on his own Twitter account as passionate about empowering local communities and fairness. He says fairness. I should also add that the leader of Brent Council has the unfortunate name of Councillor Butt, B-U-T-T. But, hey, let's not have too much fun with a man's name. The serious issue is that Councillor Butt needs to butt in to this argument and sort out the case of this poor man. His name, as you will be aware from talking about this, is Robbie Clark, and you'll be further aware that he faces losing his home because the money required for his care costs is not forthcoming. Lots of people have already made the point that I think it's fairly relevant. Many people, I passed one today actually, a flat with a big poster in the window saying, "Refugees, welcome here." Isn't that interesting? That people are actually putting those up. Refugees, welcome here. But not seeing war heroes welcome here in the same kind of way. I wonder how many of those people would welcome Robbie into their house and look after him in his moment of need. And clearly he has a moment of need. Isn't there something specific about people who've gone through all of this, who survived Hitler's death march across Europe in 1945. This isn't a bloke that was on the periphery of war and action. This is a man that was up close and personal and was lucky to be alive. This is a man who, because of his endeavours, we are all alive to have our say on a variety of issues in the English tongue as distinct from a Germanic one. 0345 6060 973. This is a man, in short, everybody, we should be looking after. And if Brent Council are thinking at any level to continue with this farce, at withholding enough cash to give this man the care he requires, without which he'll have to move into a care home, so he loses his carer and he loses his home, all in one nasty, fell swoop. Brent Council are the people at the helm of this. Brent Council are the people that should change this and could change this. And at the moment, according to his family, it's Brent Council that are letting him down. The publicity led to all of those people signing a petition on Brent Council to pay for Mr. Clark's care. When Brent seemed to announce that it would be paying the full care costs, the issue was dropped out of the headlines. Thanks to the new deferred payment scheme, which came into effect at the end of April, Mr. Clark won't have to worry about the cost, but neither will taxpayers. A spokesman was quoted as saying, "Deferred payment means the council will help to pay some people's care home bills, recouping the costs after the house is sold while they're in home, while they're in a home or after their death. But by remaining in his own home, Mr. Clark is not eligible. Furthermore, he does not own the property outright, presenting more legal complications." Should we not just look at somebody with that track record and say, "Hang on, fella, you're not 37. You're not 37 and can kind of start again, work things out, get a job, you're 97. You're 97. You experienced at the coalface what it was like to face death. You were there on the Hitler death march in the 40s. And here you are being told by your local authority there's no room in your own inn. 0345 6060 973. I'm also intrigued as to whether this is isolated. Are you familiar with other stories or cases such as this, What kind of country are we living in when this is the way we treat somebody of his years and of his background? And is there a specific case? Because I think there is for people. Many will perhaps argue that, admirable as it was, but no, sorry, you don't get special treatment just because you were in the war. Sorry, you do. You absolutely do. Ian is in Limehouse. Ian, hello.
Hello, sir.
Hi, what are your thoughts?
I know you said no puns about this councillor's surname, but I think most of your listeners would agree that he talks out of his surname. How anyone can live and sleep at night knowing that there's a 97-year-old man that has lived through hell. I mean, I'm only in my 40s, so I've never lived through a war. But how this man has survived that war, his home is his castle, and they want to take that away from him. I mean, it makes me embarrassed to say I'm British. And very few things make me angry, and I am seething.
Yeah.
It's disgusting. There's no other stronger term than what they're doing to this poor gentleman. And it's sickening. It's just sickening.
Does it make some people are creating the argument, Ian, that, you know, it's terrible, but it's terrible because he's 97, and the fact that he served for his country shouldn't be a relevant factor. What do you think to that?
He's a war hero at the end of the day, but any person who's still got their faculties and they want to live in their own home, that they've put their life and soul into that home, is entitled to stay there. Whether they served in the army, the navy, the RAF, or they've just lived through a war. Because, I mean, living in London was hard enough without being in the service. Yeah.
Certainly was. Listen, Ian, thank you very much indeed for that. 0345 6060. Great call. 0345 6060973. Carl is in St Albans. Hello, Carl.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello there. Yeah, just the government says they've got a covenant for the armed forces, which is, you know, which they guarantee people who have served in the military.
Yep.
A council house and, you know, special NHS stuff, but, you know, it's not happening. The British Legion have said that. It's not being implemented. And I was on the Thames River today, and I saw the Spitfires, 6 Spitfires, going over for the Battle of Britain. You know, celebrating that, but that must have cost a lot of money. Where's the money for these people who fought there, who were there on the ground? You know, and this guy was on a death match, you know, one of the Nazis' death matches. He survived. He's 97.
Correct.
You know, to me it doesn't make any sense. You can spend, you know, probably cost hundreds of thousands of pounds to have all this commemorate the Second World War.
Yep.
But the people who've actually fought in it, who are survivors and who need the help here and now, are getting neglected. Just.
So, do you you genuinely think then, Carl, that serving in the military should be part of the, when they look at your list of reasons why somebody should stay in their house and not go into residential care, the fact that you've served in the military should be a tick in a box?
But that's the government's, the military covenants. They put it into law. There's a military covenant. It's not me, it's the government is saying that.
Yeah.
You know, and so it's not being, because there's no council houses, is there? They're saying if you should go top of the list for the council house or get looked at specially if you served in the forces.
Sure.
But obviously, because they've sold most of the council houses off, where are they going to put them?
And I think this point, which is kind of where we began, I made a point about how we pick and choose as to what are the important narratives, who we believe is worthy of our help and who we don't. Chris says, I don't understand we're being asked to help refugees, but we have homeless older people who can't heat their homes due to lack of money, drug addicts with no hope of a recovery due to cost, and ex-forces with no home. Final word on this point, because we've got a beauty to come after the news as well, is Robert in Penge. What are your thoughts, Robert?
Well, I think it's disgusting the way Brent Council is behaving. This man's been through a lot.
The head of the council, Councillor Butt, on Twitter says that he supports fairness.
No, he doesn't understand the word of fairness, does he?
This is Robbie Clark, and I would like to thank each and every one of Honour Our Forces for the donations you are giving me and making my life much comfortable. Thank you.